Hey, everybody. Welcome to Jets Talk Now. I'm Paul Fiore. Please click like and subscribe. Thanks for joining today. We're going to do a kind of a Jets offseason update today. We're a little past a week after the end of the season. We just had our first week of NFL Wild Card, which was a bunch of really good games. Obviously, we got a bit of a blowout last night in the Steelers-Texans game. But I'm going to talk a little bit about Jets off season, coaching staff updates. If what we've known so far, I want to bring up kind of the bridge quarterback conversation and what I think is the solution to 2026. We could talk a bit about the potential rookie quarterback options that will be coming out of the draft. And then we'll just kind of close on, I think, some more broader NFL stuff. We could talk about Mike Tomlin and I actually want to broach if I dare, I want to broach the Aaron Rodgers subject because I do find it fascinating how much he is, at least on X. I don't know if this is a broad perception, but he is treated with so much disdain by the fan base, and I just find it fascinating. And so I want to just weigh in as someone who's an admitted self-admitted fan of Aaron Rodgers, but want to recognize kind of his failure here. But more broadly, just the interesting kind of dynamic between the Jet fan base and Aaron Rodgers at this point. It is fascinating to me. And then hopefully that chapter is finally over and we can just focus on the team. But anyway, before we start, I just want to say thank you to everyone who's been tuning in and subscribing. I'm beyond grateful. 650 plus subscribers now as of today on January 13th. I started this channel at the end of November. And to be honest, it was kind of a decision that I made because I had some extra time on my hands. I had just recently gone through kind of a career change or transition, I should say, and it was in between career opportunities. And quite honestly, a little bit bored. And, I watch a ton of Jets content. I'm a passionate football fan. And so I just thought it'd be fun to do something different. And it's become a regular part of my everyday, whether it's going on X and engaging with a bunch of you guys. And just I love the debating. And as long as it's respectful debate and we can just agree to disagree on certain things, I love fair perspective from others and different points of view. I hope that what I try to do on this channel, at least, is take different kind of ideas and opinions and float them out there. You may think they're stupid, and that's fine. But it's really more about what in the best interest, I believe, would be for the team. And sometimes they'll be completely off the wall and not make sense. And maybe there are things that you'll agree with. But as long as we remain respectful in comments and engaging on X, I welcome the disagreements. I think it's awesome. So thank you so much for 650 subscribers. It's been a lot of fun. And although I am starting my new job next week, which my wife is very happy about, I will continue to do content because I'll just film super early in the morning or later in the evening and then just post because I don't really do lives and things like that. So again, thank you guys. For all the support in this channel. I really do appreciate everybody. On the coaching staff front, I think you got to take there's a lot there in that it is super quiet. And, if you want to take the glass half empty approach, you can say, well, the season ended last Sunday. It is now Tuesday the 13th. We have not heard of any dismissals yet on the coaching staff at all. Obviously, aside from Steve Wilks. And, what does that mean for their approach to the offseason? And I think it's very early, right? We only have heard of 2 names so far for the defensive coordinator role, which is Dante Jones from the Brian Flores tree in Minnesota, and Wink Martindale has been spoken about a lot on the Jets beat. Heard it from Rich Cimini now on his pod. Heard it from Connor Hughes and Zach on their pod. Well, I guess, I don't know, their show. Which obviously to me means where there's smoke, there's fire when it comes to Wink Martindale. But the other names that you're not hearing of, and you are hearing them tied to other teams, which is, again, I don't know how to take this. Is this the Jets operating in silence? Well, why would we know about Dante Jones and not these other names? So it's kind of I don't know how I feel about this. I feel like agents would leak, even if the Jets don't, that their clients are meeting with the Jets because it helps if they're trying to get a job. So I think there's this perspective that maybe the Jets are doing these things in silence. The Jets can operate in silence all they want. I just believe that agents will still put stuff out there and leak to the beat. So I guess we'll see. But Jonathan Gannon's interviewing for DC roles, former Arizona head coach. Jim Leonard is now tied to potentially interviewing for the Dallas DC job, as well as Dante Jones. Jim Schwartz is being blocked from being able to interview. So is Ulbrich, from what I understand, which is fine. Schwartz is, for me, it's interesting that they're blocking him from interviewing, because when you think of it that way, is Cleveland going to force the DC onto the new head coach? That's an interesting. Listen, Jim Schwartz is great, but that is an odd way to go about not moving forward. Same thing with Atlanta, where you're holding these guys from potentially interviewing for other opportunities without knowing who the head coach is. But Schwartz was my number one guy, and so the fact that he's being blocked for any opportunity is what it is. But you don't hear anything about Raheem Morris from at least tied to the Jets. You don't hear anything about Al Harris yet. And so if you're glass half full, you look at it and say, they're doing these things to be quiet behind the scenes without anybody knowing, but they're conducting their search and they're going to land on someone that's good. If you're a doomsday fan or someone who believes that you're skeptical on Aaron Glenn and his ability to upgrade the staff, you're viewing this negatively and saying, well, we're not hearing names because maybe these names are rejecting the Jets' interview requests. And we're not a desirable place because Aaron Glenn's on a perceived hot seat. Whether he is or not, I don't know, right? None of us really know. The truth is probably somewhere in the middle. If I was being honest, I don't think the Jets can land a Jim Leonard. Doesn't mean they can't get somebody good, but I think if you are a highly coveted potential defensive coordinator, which means you haven't been a DC before, I think you want to go somewhere where you feel really good about the head coach, the plan moving forward, the stability within the organization, and your long-term opportunity for success to grow to eventually, because everybody who becomes DC usually wants to become a head coach at some point. So fair or unfair, Aaron Glenn has to live with a 3-14 season, the perception of the Jets organization being unstable, an owner who's not well looked upon in the league, and a roster, especially when you're looking at the defense, that needs a lot of work. So is this somewhere that a first-time DC who's highly coveted would want to go to? I don't know. So Dante Jones is an interesting name just because he is, from what I can gather, well-liked in league circles, It'll be interesting to see if Minnesota just doesn't promote him if they lose Flores. They haven't heard much about Brian Flores in general at this point. So again, if you're a pessimist or a skeptic, you're looking at this nervous. Now, the interesting thing is, if I was like doing a crystal ball on this thing, and certainly I've been very wrong on a lot. I've been right about stuff too, though. So, you know, I think that there's a better than 50% chance that Wink Martindale is the DC in 2026. Why? He's a name who's had success in the league. He's an experienced DC, doesn't have any aspirations to be a head coach at this point. I think Glenn will value his mentality, because if I think about Aaron Glenn, I'm trying to peel away the psychology aspect of this. Aaron Glenn's a motivational type head coach, right? His whole thing is inspirational leader, emotional leader. I'm not saying he's not an X and O's guy, but he seems to value attitude, toughness. You know, we're gonna beat you by breaking your will kind of attitude. Wink kind of comes from that same cloth. He will absolutely establish an identity on the defense. And so I think that there's a connection there for Glenn that he will like a lot. And because he's got a name, the perception of a hiring of a Wink Martindale would be that Glenn is upgrading his staff, which I think over Steve Wilkes he is. Interestingly for me, I actually view hiring Wink Martindale as further proof that Glenn cannot go out and get the hot name for defensive coordinator, because excuse me, if you see, I just watched last night's game, you see the Texans flying around on defense. It was just kind of crazy. If you see defenses like that, you see Minnesota's defense where, you know, they seem to have scheme superiority. They play the chess match as well as anybody on defense, very complex defense. Wink is not, I don't view Wink that way. Wink will be aggressive, blitz heavy. But he's not a hot candidate anymore. He's out of the league, right? He went to college for a reason. He's clashed with head coaches in the NFL. So Wink, while an upgrade, is actually the same type of hire as a Wilkes. Guy out of the league. He's had multiple jobs as DC. He's got a name. But how many people are interviewing Wink Martindale to be the DC? So, like, I get that Connor Hughes thinks he'd be the best hire for the Jets. I mean, I guess he'd be the best hire if you can't get a big name, or you can't get a coveted DC. Maybe he's the best one. But you can't tell me he's a better hire than an Al Harris, a Raheem Morris, a Jim Leonard, who would be coveted by others. So I guess we'll see. More disturbing, not more disturbing, but what bothersome to me is I'm now seeing on X other teams interviewing for QB coaches and other offensive staff positions. And again, maybe the Jets are doing things behind the scenes that we don't know, but they have not released anybody from the offensive staff as of today. Now, we could say it's early, but at some point, early becomes late very, very quickly. Because those that are coveted for these positions are going to get interviews early in the cycle. And yes, there are 8 open slots right now for for head coach, and maybe 9 if Tomlin, or 10 if LaFleur. But you want to start interviewing these guys and filling roles before those jobs get filled, because you're just creating more competition for yourself by waiting. And so now, a lot of us, I think, have been thinking that Charles London was going to be excommunicado. But is he? I mean, why is he still employed? You know, think about real life for a minute. If you're done with somebody and you don't believe that they're part of your future, do you just let them stay around and collect a paycheck? Or do they get terminated and get a 2 weeks notice and thank you for, thanks for being a part of the company, but it's time to move on. So if they are going to move on from him, why are they keeping him now? Even if they're not looking to, even if they're not interviewing yet, they could remove people that they don't believe are part of their future. And, when you heard the end of season press conference, you heard them talk about they're doing their evaluations that week. So I was assuming that by Friday we would have heard stuff. And then certainly I would have thought by the weekend we would have heard stuff. And then by Monday, at the very latest, we would have heard something. The fact that it's now Tuesday and there's no movement yet on any coaches makes me wonder, are they going to get rid of anybody of consequence, or are they just going to add like senior members to the staff? And so that for me is a red flag if they just run it back with this group and just add a couple of people to the staff. I do not think Charles London has anything in his resume that would suggest he should be the QB coach to help a young rookie come in to this organization. So if we go through the entire week and there's no movement on removing coaches, every day that goes by that we don't hear anything makes me think there's more likely that some of these guys are coming back that I thought might not be here. And that concerns me about Glenn's ability. I had talked previously about ways to win the fan base over or start to show signs of improvement. One of those is what you do with the coaching staff. And if the coaching staff is a run it back with a couple of additional senior assistants, that's not what I was hoping for going into the offseason, for being honest. The potential draft quarterback options. Dante Moore is yet to declare. I think he has until tomorrow. There's a lot of speculation that he's declaring now, especially after what Raiola did with going through the portal and committing to Oregon. He is just a sophomore, so technically he could redshirt next year, but they're paying him. So if you're taking a 5-star, 2-year starter and bringing him to your program, odds are he's probably going to come here thinking he's starting this coming year. Now, he's coming off of a bad injury. I think he broke his fibula, but all reports are he's going to be ready. So I lean 65-35, even 70-30 that Dante Moore is declaring. Don't know what's taking so long. And then you have Trinidad Chambliss, who's fighting like hell not to come out, which is odd to me. I mean, yes, in theory, maybe someone like him who's looking for a 6th year of eligibility, he's 23, he'll be 24 in the summer. He'll get more money in NIL than he might going into the draft, because I think most people have him graded as a 2nd or 3rd round quarterback. But with the class being so thin, there's a chance somebody might overdraft him. So I am surprised that he's fighting so hard for this eligibility, but he is. And then you have the field, I guess, is the way you would look at it, where the Drew Allers of the world, the Garrett Nussmeyers of the world, the Klubniks of the world, Carson Becks are all kind of those guys that are day 2, 3, or day 2, 3 prospects. So, my position on this is, I think I've been clear on it, but I don't think I could be any more clear as I think about it further. I like Dante more as a prospect. I don't like him as a top 5 pick in the draft. Now, people will say to me, if you like him as a prospect, whether you like him at 2 or you like him at 16, it's the same thing. And I just don't subscribe to that, because I think the higher you draft somebody, 2 things. Number one, the sooner they should be impacting your football team. I think the perception will be by the fan base above and beyond. If you're drafting somebody in the top 5, they're going to expect him to play. You're going to feel the pressure to have to put him out there. And I don't trust the Jets in that scenario. I don't remember the last time a quarterback was drafted in the top 5 who did not play early in the season. When I say early, within the first 8 weeks. I actually cannot recall one. He's 20 years old. He has 20 career college starts. He has talent, but he needs work. And I think if this was the class of 20, if the 27 class was going to be as plentiful, if the 26 class was as plentiful as what the 27 class might be, I actually think he'd probably stay another year. But because it's so bereft of first-round graded quarterbacks, I think he's going to come out. So I think if you were drafting him at 16, and he won't be there at 16, so let's just be very clear. I'm not saying pass on him at 2 and draft him at 16. I'm saying it's easier for me to stomach drafting a quarterback in the second half of the first round who won't impact your team for the better part of the season than it is for me to draft him in the top 5. That's my personal opinion on Dante Moore. I still think the Jets should call the Raiders and see what it would take to get Mendoza. I know everyone thinks I'm crazy, but until you make that phone call, you just don't know. Trinidad Chamblis is a very talented kid. If he comes out, is an interesting and intriguing prospect. He's got a lot of the things that I enjoy about college quarterbacks that I think separate people from college to the NFL, especially up here in the mindset. He's fearless. He's got massive brass ones. He's got really, I think, intriguing arm talent. He's quick. Is true dual threat. So I like that about him. He seems like he's a fiery type of player. I love that. I want that. You know, a lot of these guys today get criticized for being fiery on the sidelines and getting upset. And I'm like, I want my quarterback to be that personality. I don't want a wet blanket like Justin Fields. I really don't. I want somebody who's got anger and fire and desire inside of them. I want the Tom Brady throwing the clipboard or the iPad pissed off when things aren't going well. I want the Aaron Rodgers throwing his helmet and being pissed off. I want that personality in the most important position on the field. So if we disagree there, then it is what it is. So I like that about Chamblas because I think he's got that. That's why I like Mendoza. He's fiery. He's got that inside of him. Chambliss scares me for his size. I do not believe for 1 second that kid is 6'1". I just don't. I think he's more likely 5'10", 5'11". And yes, you have examples like Russell Wilson, who had a nice long career and was smaller. But you also have the Kyler Murrays who are smaller and have been consistently hurt. And you see this, and then you see guys like Bryce Young, who is also smaller, who had a decent season this year, but I don't think will ever be at the level necessary to go all the way and win something. So those things make me nervous about Chambliss. I would not touch him before the 3rd round, which would, I think the Jets don't have a 3rd round pick. They'd have to move up to get him. But that would be where I would view him. I certainly wouldn't draft him at 33 or 44. Just my opinion. Aller, I love his size. I love his physical traits. His accuracy was pretty bad this year. He's a big project. But again, if Aller's sitting there in the 4th round, would you draft him? I might. So, I think the field, here's the way I look at it. If I'm the Jets, if I love Dante Moore, I sure as hell better have a real plan and acknowledge the risk of drafting him. But if you're Muji and Glenn and that's your guy, as long as it's not drafting him out of desperation, then you draft him. That's fine. But you better have a good bridge quarterback. And I think that's where, for me, I have clarity that whether you draft Dante Moore or not, because no matter what, if you draft Dante Moore, he needs to sit. If you don't draft Dante Moore and you draft someone else later, they're going to need to sit. The difference is if you're drafting Dante Moore, you believe you have your quarterback for 2027. If you don't draft Dante Moore, you're punting to the 2027 draft because you're just taking a flyer on a guy in 26 that you're trying to develop, but you're not counting on. Either way, 2026 should not be starting a rookie quarterback, in my opinion. So that leads to the bridge QB plan. And what should that be? I've been tossing this around a lot, and somebody had tweeted something to me that on Sunday made a ton of sense, and I retweeted it. It got a lot of hits. It was like really interesting. But I think for me, there's clarity in this. I don't think the Jets are going to be able to land a Malik Willis, and I actually don't think they should try, because if your goal is to get your own guy, Malik Willis is going to want to go somewhere where he's got a true opportunity to be QB1 for more than just a 1-year bridge. Okay. And I think he's going to have that opportunity elsewhere. And I think the money is going to be close enough that the Jets aren't just going to be able to pay their way into Malik Willis. That's my opinion. He's the most intriguing free agent option for upside of all these guys. But that was Justin Fields last year, and look what it got us. So I'm of the mindset to just I don't see Malik Willis being a Jet. That brings you to your next tier of guys. And for me, the options in free agency are, this is what I would do. Jimmy G and Marcus Mariota, one of those two should be a free agent signing. Okay. To be QB2, not to start the year. Because I want to replicate. Let's make the assumption we draft Dante Moore. I want to replicate what the Giants did for Dart, and more importantly, what the replicate is like poor man's terms, but in a let's call it a Temu kind of version of what the Kansas City Chiefs and the Green Bay Packers had when they drafted Patrick Mahomes and Jordan Love. There was zero pressure to play those kids. Zero. Why? Well, you had a guy by the name of Aaron Rodgers in Green Bay, and you had Alex Smith in Kansas City. Alex Smith, professional quarterback. Aaron Rodgers obviously was still great. But they had a deliberate plan to draft these kids as succession plans. Jets don't have a succession plan today, so signing a Mariota or Jimmy G is truly just a stopgap until you put Dante Moore on the field. So by week 4, Dante Moore is starting, in my mind, if that's the only way you go. That's not good enough. I don't think that works. So it's not real yet, but I think it will be. I think it's very likely that Kirk Cousins is going to get cut by Atlanta. They just restructured his contract to make it easier to cut him. It creates more financial flexibility for them. That means that if he becomes a free agent, what you sign him to is going to be significantly less in the way of dollars and what you have to take on versus what it would have been to trade for Kirk Cousins last year, as an example. Or what you'd have to commit to a Malik Willis. Kirk Cousins finished the season as a starting quarterback for Atlanta I believe they won their final 5 games of the season, and he played well. Okay. He is a professional. He knows how to run an offense. He can still throw the football. He can't move for shit, but who cares? I think he's an Aaron Glenn type player. I think he will galvanize the locker room. He's very well liked by his teammates. And I think he'd be a fantastic mentor for a Dante Moore or any of these other guys that potentially they could bring in. And as long as he stays healthy, he could be QB1 for 2026 and actually have maybe run a competent offense. And I don't see a better option than him. Like, people will mention Kyler Murray. Yes, Kyler Murray is a talented football player, but there's so much other stuff that comes with Kyler Murray that I hate. I hate his leadership skills. He doesn't have any. I hate that people question whether it's fair or not. I hate that people question whether he loves being a gamer more than he loves playing football. I hate that 2 head coaches under his watch have been fired. I hate that he's been injured as much as he's been. I hate his size. And I think he would be toxic in the New York media. And look, I'm not the only one saying this. Take it for what it's worth. But when Connor Hughes comes out and Zach Rosenblatt come out on their show and say, getting a Kyler Murray is a desperation move because we don't think he'd fit in the New York market. Those are 2 guys that are on the beat who think that his personality will not jibe in New York. You want to bring that into the locker room after you went through with Justin Fields, who's a good dude, but wilted under everything that happened. You don't know what's going to happen. Woody Johnson comes out and did what he did. He ran him right under the bus, and that was the end of it for Fields. I mean, he became, I just don't see Kyler Murray for his youth and opportunity to be a higher ceiling than Kirk Cousins being the right fit. If you get a Dante Moore as a good example, Dante Moore should sit for a year. Kyler Murray is not going to come here to just be a bridge for a year. He's going to want to prove he's the guy. And again, if it goes wrong, it's going to go really, really wrong. So I love Kirk Cousins for the Jets, not because I think he's going to go and get them to the promised land, but he solves so many issues that they currently have. Number one would be the idea that you would need to be starting Dante Moore right away. So for me, the plan would be go get Kirk Cousins, sign one of Jimmy G or Mariota, and then draft a quarterback. I wouldn't draft Dante Moore personally, but if they do, I'm okay with it. If those are the 2 guys ahead of him, I can live with it. That's their bet. That's not my bet. My bet would be to push it out and draft one of Aller, Nussmeier, Klubnik, Mateer, those types of guys, and maybe develop them into a QB2, and then draft one in 27. That's what I would do. Because I think this would actually buy Glenn time. Like, this would give Glenn an opportunity to take the pressure off. Because I think that, with enough moves in the offseason, with reinforcements on defense, I think they could get to a 7-win season with a guy like Kirk Cousins under center, maybe 8 wins. He will absolutely get a 3rd season if they win 7 or 8 games next year. So I think at this point, they should be thinking, how do I get to year 3 and get my shot at the quarterback in 27? That's what I think. If you can't get Mendoza, how do I get to 27 and get a shot at one of those guys? That's what I'd be thinking if I was them, because I don't believe enough in Dante Moore to draft him 2. And then anybody else that I draft is just going to be a project I'm not putting all my chips on the table for. That's the way I think about it. So that's the bridge solution to me. Some people think I'm crazy and they hate Kirk Cousins. They think he won't come here because of what happened with Woody in the past. I mean, I just don't. If Woody Johnson's going to hold a grudge over something that happened 8 years ago, or if our fan base is, you're not thinking about the big picture. The big picture is get through 2026 intact with a shot at your guy in 27. That's the way I view it. Wildcard weekend was fun. Just touch on it quickly. I think New England's going to be a really, really tough out. They're so well coached. Vrabel's just done a great job over there. I hate to say it. If I was to look at the field in the AFC now, Buffalo pulled out that game against Jacksonville. But I still feel like, as great as Josh Allen is, I just don't think they're good enough broadly as a team to get there. I can't believe I'm saying this. I think New England's going to make it to the Super Bowl. The caveat to that is the most dominant team on either side of the football right now in the AFC is Houston's defense. They're insane. I just don't trust CJ Stroud. I mean, he was horrendous in the first half last night. And so is Houston going to go into New England and beat them? I struggle believing it. I mean, I guess we'll see. But what you saw this weekend was what great coaching does and what average to below average coaching does. And by the way, the other thing that I think is kind of an interesting, all these guys passing up field goals makes me crazy when these games are so tight, but it is what it is. The Rams survived. That to me doesn't bode well. And I know it's a week-to-week league, but I don't know if I can see them coming out of the NFC. I think the path is clear for Seattle right now. The 49ers are so banged up, even though they pulled off that win. I think that's more of an indictment on Philly than it is anything else. And I know Saleh's going to get a bunch of interviews and maybe he gets a head coaching job, but I think he's a great DC and I don't think he's a great head coach, obviously, for reasons we all saw when he was here. Some guys are just really, really excellent as a coordinator. I feel like he's that guy. And maybe he's learned from that, but I don't see it. But yeah, what stuck out most to me is I feel very strongly that New England is your Super Bowl team in the AFC. I still don't trust Denver. I just don't trust Bo Nix over Drake May. I think the defenses are close enough. And again, on the NFC side, I do think there's a world where the Rams can get there. But I love Seattle still. I just do. So it'll be interesting to see how it all goes. Last night's game was really surprising to me. I expected a much better showing from Pittsburgh, and what we saw was an absolute bloodbath. The Houston defense was overwhelming the Pittsburgh offensive line all night. It was crazy. I mean, Rodgers was pressured. I saw a stat 45% of the time, which is the most he's been pressured in 8 years behind center. It was crazy. I mean, that game was 7-6 at halftime. It had no right being 7-6. CJ Stroud looked like he was playing for the other team. He had given the ball away multiple times. Pittsburgh couldn't move the ball at all. A couple of plays where they could have made something happen. DK had a drop. That was a big drop in the moment in that game. But for the most part, that was a bludgeoning. And so, it leads to this question about Tomlin. 7 years of one and done in the playoffs and getting blown out. You can't hide from that, right? He's got 19 years of never having a losing season. But what will they do? It'll be interesting. I think it's better than 50% chance he's gone. And I think it's better than 50% chance he takes the year off. I think different than Harbaugh, I think he's not going to jump into a job right away. I think he's going to take a year. I think all reports say he has a TV job on the table. So I could see him doing the 1 year off like Vrabel did, recharge the battery, and then go back into the cycle in 27. And I think as a Jet fan, it's a silly debate to suggest that you'd rather Aaron Glenn than Mike Tomlin as your head coach. Now, maybe we're looking at it differently at the end of next year. I pray that I'm wrong. But I just don't feel very strongly that Aaron Glenn is going to prove doubters wrong. I don't. And I want to be wrong because I'm a doubter and I'm a skeptic. But I just think he's fighting such an uphill battle. And for me, I'm not overly worried about, like, unlike the coordinators where I want to bring in somebody innovative, young, hungry, doing things different. For the head coach of the New York Jets, and this isn't for every team, but for the New York Jets specifically, I want to bring in somebody that's been there, done that before, who's the adult in the room. Because I don't trust in any way Woody Johnson to allow guys like Aaron Glenn, and before him Robert Saleh, and before him, I mean, just go down the list, to do their jobs without his interference for any length of time. I want someone who's been there, done that, been successful at it, is the adult in the room, can say, listen, let me build this the way I know how to build it, and get us to respectability and credibility as an organization. I'm tired of the Jets being the laughingstock in the media. It's exhausting to constantly see people taking shots at them. And I don't know if Aaron Glenn's going to turn it around and get to a place where people are respecting us again. And if he does, I'll be the first one to come on here and say he should be coach of the year. But Mike Tomlin gives you instant credibility. Mike Tomlin will get you to a place that the organization will no longer be a laughingstock. Does that mean he'll win a Super Bowl here? No. But if he takes your team to a place where it's a consistent playoff team, you've now created the same situation that the Knicks had with Thibodeau. Thibodeau came in after the Knicks had been a joke for many, many years, butt of Charles Barkley's jokes on every show he ever was on. And he made them a consistently good winning organization. And then they moved on from him because they believed he wasn't going to win a title. That's their choice at that point. Why couldn't the Jets hire a Tomlin, a McCarthy, a Harbaugh, any of these types of names to get you out from where you are right now? You are under the dirt and buried in the NFL. And create a level of respectability that people will look at the organization and look at the job as a desirable one. Instead of taking swings at coordinators who are learning on the job, who get buried by the New York press, buried by the fan base because they're not doing well, and then buried by the owner because he starts to get involved. That's how I feel. And again, I'm allowing myself the freedom to change my mind on Aaron Glenn. But sitting here today, I think it's like 75-25 that he does not get a year 3. Because this is what I think is going to happen. I hate to say this. I think they're going to draft Dante Moore. I think Dante Moore is going to be playing by week 8. I think Dante Moore is going to struggle. I think if I look at the Jets' schedule and who they're playing next year, they're going to win 4, 5, or 6 games. And they're going to have to move on from Glenn because he would not show enough progress. And we're going to go through this vicious cycle all over again. And you know what? If we get to 2027 and he's no longer the head coach, they better bring in someone with experience. And if Mike Tomlin's sitting there, I would go hard after him. That's me personally. A lot of you guys are going to tell me he's proven not to be able to win. The league's passed him by, blah, 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 blah. Did people feel that way about Andy Reid when he left Philly to go to KC? Yeah. You know what? Patrick Mahomes and him worked it out. And so I feel like with all that draft capital, with all that cap space, Tomlin, and I actually right now do like Muji, but we'll see, would be a good fit in New York in 2027 if Aaron Glenn does not turn it around. I'm not saying to go after him today. Just to be clear, I'm giving Aaron Glenn his second season. That's just my perspective on it. So if Aaron Glenn doesn't work out in 2027, if we're just chasing another coordinator first-timer, I don't love it. I want a guy that can bring in a staff, a guy that can build a program, and a guy that can tell the owner to shut the F up because I know what I'm doing. So you have to have that cachet as a head coach to be able to do that. That's my view. Lastly, Aaron Rodgers. Oh, Aaron. For a guy that played 17 games in New York, because I don't count 4 snaps in 2023. For a guy that played 17 games in this city, you are the player that I have never seen more polarizing in all my years as a fan, and maybe Jamal Adams, but he played a lot longer and I think created a lot more noise just the way he left the organization because he wanted out. But the vitriol towards Aaron Rodgers is a fascinating one to me. And I'm just want to say this. And I'm saying this as an Aaron Rodgers fan. So take that for what it's worth. And you want to call me a fanboy or an Aaron Rodgers defender, that's fine. I wanted Aaron Rodgers to be the Jets quarterback badly. I was of the belief he would not be the Jets quarterback. I thought Derek Carr was going to be the Jets quarterback that year because I didn't think Rodgers really would want to come here. I thought he was using us as leverage, like most people do, to work things out with the Packers. But it turns out he actually wanted to be a Jet. Now, I think Rodgers can bullshit everybody, but he absolutely came here with the understanding that he was going to have a lot of say in personnel, which was a disaster, right? The Jets should never, if the condition was we want Aaron Rodgers, but the only way we're getting him is he gets to bring his guys in, he gets his offensive coordinator, he gets say in the building that nobody else has. I don't think they should have made the decision to do that because it's a desperation move at that point. And maybe that's how desperate Joe Douglas was and Robert Saleh was. But Aaron Rodgers is not a personnel guy. He's a quarterback, a really good one, one of the best of all time. So shame on the Jets for catering to him there. Shame on Aaron Rodgers for believing he could just go do whatever the hell he wanted. But he came here, and not only for that reason, I think he came here because he believed he had a great defense. I think he believed that the pieces were in place. So we had a guy willingly come here with caveats, tore his Achilles 4 plays into the season, busted his ass to come back for everything that we saw, and then played 2024 at a level that was, let's call it league average, certainly better than any Jet quarterback we had seen since Fitzpatrick. But they won 5 games, and they were an overall mess as a team. How much of that you want to put on him for 2024 is, I guess, your perspective and your lens that you view the team. I actually put him way down the list of reasons why we sucked in 2024, because I believe that it all started with not firing Salah at the end of year 3 and not bringing in Vrabel, because I think Vrabel would have kept Rodgers when Vrabel was just sitting on the sidelines with nobody giving him a job. And I think 2024 would have gone differently with Vrabel as the head coach. I think he wouldn't have tolerated some of the bullshit within the organization in general. But when you went into year 4 with Salah, you needed to finish the year 4 with Salah, and they didn't. They blew it up when they were 2-3, coming off of a really tough loss. But they weren't buried at 2-3. Handing the job to a guy that was not ready, and the whole thing just went off the rails. I put that on the owner. The owner is the reason why 2024 was a disaster. The owner. He got involved in personnel decisions. He was the one that wanted Hassan Reddick. He was the one that pushed all his chips on the table out of desperation. He's the one that ripped the rug out from under the team, put Ulbrich in the chair when he wasn't ready. So I put it all on the owner. And then the players are second to that. So that's my perspective on it. Now, I wanted Rodgers back in 2025 before Glenn was hired. I wanted them to draft a quarterback, namely Jackson Dart. I didn't have this pod, so you won't be able to go back except to look at my Twitter account, where I was saying, bring him back, draft a quarterback, let him learn under Rodgers. They chose not to. I actually thought when they hired Glenn, they were going to bring back Rodgers, because I thought Glenn and Rodgers would work. And then when we found out how that whole thing went down, it was clear it was never going to work. So I don't begrudge the Jets moving on from Rodgers. My issue was I thought it was handled poorly. I think there was a different way to handle it if there was no intention really to bring him back, which the more you listen to these things, the more you kind of understand that Glenn didn't want him back. He wanted his own guy. Somebody that wasn't going to create noise. That was Justin Fields. That was his choice. That's fine. I just think they could have handled it in a way that would have been classier as an organization. Now, again, you'll disagree with me, but I just think if and again, I don't care that he flew here. That's stupid. I do care, though, like he flew here. He goes and meets with them. And again, I only know the side of the story from Rodgers because Rodgers decided to go on TV and blab about it. But the Jets didn't defend themselves in this either. Glenn met with him for less than 5 minutes, walked out of the room, came back, and then said, we're moving in a different direction. And according to Rodgers, it was like a 10-minute, 15-minute meeting. It feels like that was – here's what I have to go on. Aaron Glenn came in very alpha as a head coach, so I believe the story because I think Aaron Glenn was trying to assert himself as the head coach. He was doing it with the media. He was doing it in his press conferences. He was doing it in the way they talked about the previous coaching regime. So I believe that. I also believe that Aaron Rodgers should have shut his stupid mouth and not gone on Pat McAfee and talked about it. I also believe he should have shut his mouth and not continually backhand slap the organization every time he took an opportunity to. It was a childish, immature thing to do as a 42-year-old man. He's a narcissist. He's all these things. He's also a great quarterback. So from my perspective, I have no ill will to Aaron Rodgers. I have no ill will to the Jets. They both did handle this poorly, and it's time to move on. So I think it's a little bit weird that the fan base was reveling in his failure last night. He got to go 10-7 and leave, hopefully on a better note than he did when it was his final season in New York. As an Aaron Rodgers fan, I'm happy for him. I want him to retire, but I thought he handled himself like a child when they let him go. And I think the Jets handle themselves like the Jets by letting him go the way they did, as opposed to even whether he flew or not, just be like, hey, Aaron, after all this conversation and thought, we've decided we want to move in a different direction. With all respect to you, you did everything you could here. It didn't work. You're a great guy, great quarterback. We want you to land where you want to land. let's leave on good terms. We don't know you. You don't know us. Let's move on. And that would have been, to me, the right way to handle it. But again, for whatever reason, this is a controversial subject. People really are in their feelings about him. I'm glad it's over. I'm glad we never have to talk about it again. So I hope to God the Jets figure it out. We need a quarterback for 2026. My plan, Kirk Cousins, Jimmy G or Mariota as QB2, and then draft a guy later in the draft with your eyes on 2027. That's what I would do if I was Aaron Glenn and Darren Muji. Let's see what they do. If there's any news with coordinators or things like that, we'll talk more. We'll pop on here. And other than that, I appreciate you guys for tuning in. Have a great day. Thanks, everybody. See you soon.